What is going on, guys? This is Bunny Muffins. Got a new video today for the 9.21 patch notes. We'll be going over all the changes and what I think will happen in the next week's meta. This is the last patch for the beta season, so after this one, they're going to give out some sort of ranked rewards for whatever you finish. I hope you guys all climb up to the next division or whatever you were aiming for this season. But yeah, take a note of that. It'll end in 2 weeks from now. So just keep that in mind as you're playing. So the biggest change this patch, this is a relatively small patch overall, but the biggest change this patch is the player damage. Right now, player damage is a little low in the early game. People are intentionally losing games a little too often, even for my taste. I never really liked this strategy because I think lose streaking overall is a strategy, but not intentionally losing for getting an item off a carousel. I don't think that's very healthy because it doesn't give you that many decisions to make. You just put in the worst units that you possibly can. It does make it a little harder to stockpile gold, as I mentioned here, but most people were intentionally losing just to get better item picks. But I guess it makes econing a little harder, so we'll see how that affects the games. What I suspect will change is that a lot of the 2-star legendaries that people are often completing right now, maybe it'll happen a little less often because you could kick those players out earlier in the game, which is good because I think having a meta revolving around 2-star legendaries is kind of toxic because if you complete it first, it makes it more difficult for other people to complete it as well. And a lot of that's due to luck, not necessarily due to skill, because level 2 Kaisa or Pantheon completed with Nico's help, for example, is kind of really not interactive for people who don't have Nico. Traits there changing. Guardian gets a minor buff, 45 to 40 armor. This really doesn't change anything. Hextech item disabled duration, 7 to 5 seconds. That's pretty interesting. I don't think Hextech was that much of an issue in this meta, or in the last patch. But this is a pretty significant nerf. If we do 2 divided by 7, that's around 28% change. So that is pretty significant. Whenever you see something nerfed by like around 30%, that's something to pay attention to. So Hextech does get a lot weaker, which makes all of those comps slightly weaker. I don't really think Hextech was really that broken. I think the main Hextech user is Jinx, and I think the champion itself, Jinx, is broken with the item Giantslayer, so I don't think the way to nerf that is by reducing Hextech item disable duration. I think they should just reduce the power level on Giantslayer. Night damage block. Oh, Riot finally, their balance team, figured it out. 6 Knights wasn't broken, 4 Knights was much more popular, but a 5 damage nerf isn't really that much here. I kind of like this change. It tones it down a little bit, but doesn't make it unusable. So I'm actually happy they made this change, but I'm just surprised they didn't make it last patch. They had to wait till this patch to figure out that 4 Knight was incredibly strong, but this shouldn't change anything. It just tones it down a little bit. Ranger attack speed bonus, 25% at 2 Rangers to 40%. That's actually a pretty huge change because Kaisa is a disgustingly broken champion right now. And buffing the 2 Ranger buffs, so let's say you have Kindred and Kaisa in a Knight composition. Like 6 Knights, Kindred plus Kaisa. I don't know why you're buffing Kaisa, because she's the best champion in the game if you get to pick items. Buffing her in this way, I know she isn't always played with Rangers. Sometimes she's played in Void, sometimes she's played just solo in like a Noble comp, for example. But in Noble, she gets Ranger as well, so never mind on that. I disagree with this change. They need to do something about Kaisa or Giantslayer in this patch in order to justify buffing 2 Ranger buff. Next, we're going on to the Sorcerer buff. This doesn't change anything. No one's ever going to play 6 Sorcerer or 9 Sorcerer unless Dragon Claws change, so that's irrelevant. Champions, Lyssandra's starting mana increased by 10 mana. It's funny, when you buff a champion like 4 patches in a row or however much they did, a champion starts to become pretty strong. So I guess they're toning that down a little bit, which is fair. Lyssandra's kind of was hidden OP for a while, and now she's probably one of the best 2-cost champions when upgraded. So I can see why they made this change. Varus attack damage increase, that's fine. He was probably not played that often. Brand, wow, bounce range increased from 2 hexes to 3. That's actually huge because, oh, let's see the others. They also increased his missile speed from slower to faster. We don't know what that means in terms of actual numbers, but I'm surprised they buffed it in 2 different dimensions. Increasing the hex range, that's very powerful because now a lot of times where you curse at your monitor saying that, oh wow, he only hit 1 person, that's going to happen a lot less, so that makes him much stronger. Positioning for Brand will be more difficult or maybe even impossible because you need someone really long range on the other side of your team to kind of bait out that spell. I like the change though. I feel like Brand was getting too many ultimates that were only hitting 1 person, and that isn't really fun for anyone. Cho'Gath spell damage, he got buffed a little bit. I'm not really sure why. 4 Void is really powerful, but maybe with the player damage changes, 4 Void is less likely with Kai'Sa, so maybe that's why they gave it a little bit of a buff. I'm not really too sure. I feel like Cho'Gath was already pretty strong, but to each their own. Draven attack damage decrease. Yeah, Draven, he's always going to be strong, so no amount of nerfs will stop people from playing him just because Imperial buff is so strong and Blade Master is also pretty strong on a champion that solely relies on auto attacks. But I like this change. They should tone him down a little bit, but when he's critting for like 600 health, I don't think 5 damage at level 1 is gonna make that much of a difference, you know? Pantheon armor reduced, that's fine. It's not enough because the difference between 80 and 70 isn't that critical because that's a lot of armor already based on how the math works. And for damage reduction, if it was a change from like 30 armor to 20 armor, that would be a huge change, but 80 to 70 doesn't really change that much. But I'm glad they nerfed Pantheon a tiny bit, even though it's not as much as I'd like. Items, Locket of the Iron Solari duration increase, that's fine. I always like this item, it's just not fit in this meta right now because games are lasting so long. Redemption health threshold changed from 25% to 30%. This is a buff because that means redemption goes off much earlier. I don't like this change though. I feel like redemption's already a really strong item, so it doesn't really make sense to buff an item that's already strong. Repeating crossbow attack speed and crit chance per stack increased from 20% to 30%. I feel like this item is good already, but no one knows how to use it yet. I don't even know how to use it yet, but it has to be good at a certain point because they buffed it by large margins for the past couple of weeks. So there's got to be a point where it's actually good. Is it now? I'm not really sure. It's really hard to use because you really like putting 3 items on your primary carry, and if you make repeating crossbow, it gives it less value because you'll never get your 3 item carry to hold this item. So it's really tough to say on how to actually make this item work. This item is pretty good on teams where everyone is holding their fair share of the bargain versus teams that rely on 1 carry. For example, in Knights, 6 Knights plus a carry, this item is dreadful. It's completely awful because you don't care if your Mordekaiser has a bunch of attack speed and critical strike chance, but in something like 6 Assassins, this would be really useful. Spirit Shojin mana restoration increased from 15% to 18%. I don't really like this change. Spirit Shojin's pretty strong. The problem is every other item that builds from BF Sword is super strong, and that's why people aren't building Spirit Shojin. But maybe this helps a little bit. But really, you just need to nerf all the other really strong BF Sword items in order to have people play Spirit Shojin. So essentially, they buffed having BF Sword by making this change, which I disagree with. They should nerf the BF Sword items. Trap Claw stun, because now it's like whoever gets a sword has another item that they could possibly go that got buffed, which doesn't make any sense at all. Trap Claw stun duration decreased from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. That's perfectly fine. Trap Claw, I'll admit I was wrong when I first saw this item. I thought it wouldn't be that great, but it's turned out to be really strong against champions such as Akali. But that's a good change because I think it's a very good defensive item because it normally blocks that first big spell on your primary carry. Bug fixes. Kai'Sa tooltip now displays properly. Coins don't launch as far. I like this change. Sometimes you have to run really far when coins drop from a bag. Adjusted a few of the drops in Thieves' Gloves. I don't know if that means it got stronger or weaker. I wish they kind of let us know on that end. Draven now has the attended attack speed ratio. I guess maybe he didn't have what they stated before. And players will no longer receive inexplicable massive amounts of damage during overtime. Okay, that's fair. Overall, kind of a strange patch. They didn't really touch on anything that I thought should be changed, such as level 2 Kaisa, level 2 Pantheon. I guess the damage changes affects that a little bit, but I've seen level 2 legendaries completed so early because of Nico's help, and this base damage doesn't affect it because they'll win with 1 HP. It doesn't matter how much HP they have. Also, the change to Rangers I feel is kind of odd because it buffs Kaisa, and as I said before, I think she's way too strong right now, especially at level 2. Lastly, Pantheon nerf doesn't really do anything. And I don't know why they aren't nerfing the other BF Sword items or BF Sword as a whole. They could just make it give less attack damage. Maybe they'll tone it down a little bit. But no, they didn't do anything on Giantslayer. They didn't do anything on Guardian Angel. So BF Sword's still the best item in the game by far, by a huge margin actually. So it's probably going to be around the same gameplay as last patch minus the damage changes. So maybe you can't be as greedy early. But that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Good luck on your climb. And again, this is the last patch before the season ends. So good luck on everything there. I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my socials below.